I've said it several times in different places on this channel that my preference in sewing machines is for the shuttle type machines, and that is because my first encounter with an antique sewing machine was this model here. This is a branded Davis Model D sewing machine made sometime in the teens, and behind it is the 3/4 size Davis Model T, also dating from sometime in the same period. These machines were made in Dayton, Ohio by the Davis Company. The Davis Company is a very interesting company. They were originally based in Watertown, New York, and in the 1890s were persuaded to move to Dayton by none other than the Huffman family. And sometime in the 1890s, to supplement the construction of sewing machines to keep the business going during the off season for sewing machines, they began making bicycles. And the bicycle end of the business eventually evolved into what we now know as Huffy bicycles through a interesting turn of events. But that's a story for some other time, really. Or interested in looking at sewing machines. But as a person who's always been interested in old bicycles and collected old bicycles, I've always thought that to be very interesting. And the fact that Davis very prominently used the fact that they used ball bearings in their sewing machines in their advertising, I think is a kind of an interesting tie-in with bicycles, because that was also a big thing with bicycles, was the use of ball bearings. So anyway, let's take a closer look at these machines. Obviously, I've got just the heads here. Unfortunately, I don't have any of the woodwork that goes with these. And this Model T is very incomplete. As you can see, it's missing the cap that goes over the top of the needle bar. It's missing the normal slide plate. It's got one of the accessory slide plates for the bobbin cover. But otherwise, it's pretty complete. It had the remains of a very old Hamilton-Beech motor on it that was mostly pot metal and had disintegrated. And I'd like to find a Davis handcrank for this machine and put it in a cabinet eventually, a portable cabinet. The Davis handcranks are unique. I've only seen a couple, but the handcranks attach via these two screw holes to the bed plate there. There's one there and one there. Older Davis machines are well known for their vertical feed, where there are no feed dogs down here. The feed happens in the presser foot. These machines are, from the teens, so they obviously were made after that setup had been abandoned. There's the bobbin of the Davis machine, the shuttle, I should say. Here's a Davis shuttle. Both of these machines use the same Davis shuttle. They're very simple machines to operate, and they perform very well. Of course, of interest to me is the mechanical aspect of these machines, the mechanism that's used. Let me get my light here to help out so you can see the system that's used. There's two eccentrics on the main shaft and the arm. One operates the forked end of this lever that pivots on cone and cup bearings right here, and that transmits motion to the arm which carries the shuttle, and this is the pivot of that arm, and that's the only place in the head of the machine that has ball bearings. The Davis treadle stands made extensive use of ball bearings, but in the head of the machine, this being the head, this pivot is the only part with ball bearings, and I'll show you that in a moment. The feed is the up and down movement of the feed dogs is derived from the shuttle carrier. The adjustable part of the feed, the front, the back, is derived from this piece here following the second cam, and you can kind of get an idea of the way the two cams are timed. Let's tip the head back, and we'll prop it up on something, and we'll observe the operation of the Okay, here's the lower end of that lever, and this part of the mechanism, this lever and this shuttle carrier, are virtually identical to the mechanisms used by Domestic. I think they were the first company to use this layout, and the later New Home machines, after they abandoned their Singer Model 12 derived driving mechanism. And then there's a similar aspect on the white machines too, but the way the back and forth motion of the lever is derived on a white is different than the way it's derived on one of these. I'll operate the machine here. You can see the operation. You can see how the up and down motion of the feed dogs is derived with this connecting link here with the inclined end, and there's a roller there that causes it to move up and down. This is a nice little detail that I like that most of the other machines do not have, and it's those two specially shaped washers on the end of that ball that play in that slot there. This is the ball bearings, and it's made just like the ball bearings would be in the bottom bracket of a bicycle. If you don't know what the bottom bracket is, that's where the pedals are mounted. The variable feed is accomplished with this linkage here. In this position, as you can see, there is no motion imparted to the feed dogs. This position is the position of maximum stitch length. And now you can see what's going on there. Similar in concept to the sliding block used in a lot of Singer stitch regulators, except in this case the sliding block has been replaced by a swinging link. I'll have to do a short video on radial valve gears to sort of explain the differences. But look up the differences between the Hackworth and the Marshall valve gear, and you'll understand what the principle is. And of course, this end is the shuttle carrier. Okay, enough of that. I'm sure there's some people asking how you thread the machine, and this is a fairly simple machine to thread and use. There are two spool pins. I'm assuming you would use the back spool pin for winding the bobbin. The version which I encountered of this machine, and it was a New Cottage machine too. It was labeled New Cottage. I think that was a brand Davis may have used to try to compete with the new homes, Home, Cottage, did not have the spool pin in the middle of the arm. It was the same machine otherwise. It just had the single back spool pin. This spool pin has a little rotating table on it too, where the spool would go. But like a lot of machines, put the spool on there. There's a thread guide, the front, go between the two tension discs. So another thread guide there. Goes through the take-up arm, through the thread guide on the face plate. Then through the thread guide here on the bottom of the needle bar. And then I'm not going to try this. Maybe I will. Then you go left to right through the eye of the needle. Can I get it through? I don't know if I'm able to get that through or not. I don't know if I really need to do this or not. I'm not going to show you how to sew on this machine. I've already showed you really all you need to know if you're needing to operate this. Yeah, I'm not going to try. Let's review that again. Spool pin, whichever spool pin of your choice. Like I said, some of these only had the spool pin on the back of the arm above the pillar. Some of these have got the spool pin on the middle of the arm. The top thread guide between the tension discs. I was doing this one-handed, so obviously it did not go. There we go. Between the tension discs, and this does have automatic tension discs with the presser foot, and then there is a manual release right there. Bottom thread guide, take up, thread guide on the faceplate, thread guide at the bottom of the needle bar, and then from left to right through the eye of the needle. And then threading the shuttle is just like threading the shuttle on any other shuttle type sewing machine. It's just like the threading of the shuttle on the Singer model 127 and 128, which I have a video of, and winding the bobbin. That all operates the same way too. This uses a very Davis style bobbin winder with the follower on each side of that cam. And then if you've got one of these, the E stands for electric, I'm sure, on this here, and you can see it's very obviously been stenciled for some private store brand. You can see the factory applied decals, and then the decals that have been applied for the vendor that it was sold to. This machine threads in the exact same way. Well, I'm sure there'll be questions or comments about this machine from viewers. It's not one of the more common machines. I, being originally from Ohio, even though I live in Oklahoma, and this is the OK Bridges channel, I am very partial to the Ohio brands. So, gotta support the Whites and the Davis machines. Even though the Davis machines were, newcomers to Ohio, I still like them. I still like all the machines they made. I think they're interesting. Eventually I'll get a complete machine with all the woodwork and everything for both of these eventually, I hope. But until then, they don't take up a lot of space like this anyway. Nice thing about these Davis machines too is they actually have feet on the heads, so you can set them on a tabletop and they'll work. Unlike a lot of other machines, they'll flop around there unless you prop them up. So it's another plus. And I gotta really say, I like the stitch regulators that were used on a lot of the other companies versus the Singers. And we're all familiar with the knob on the Singer machines where you gotta sit there and twirl it and twirl it and twirl it to get it where you want. These are sort of the instantly adjustable. You just loosen the screw and you know, you move it where you want it, and it's even got a scale marked on there. You know, it's something that people that use modern machines probably take for granted, that there's a scale there where you can actually make repeatable adjustments. But that's the way a lot of these other machines are. You know, I can set that very quickly, and I can set it to those positions the same each time. So the story of the Davis Company is a tragic one. I'll let you research that on your own if you're curious about it. I find their machines and the history of the companies very fascinating. So this is Oklahoma Bridges. Glad you followed along. Thank you for watching. See you next time.